Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another edition of To The Point podcast. Hope you guys are all enjoying a good Friday, whether you're celebrating it religiously, whether you just like having a day off, like me and Ryder. We accept everything here on To The Point, and today we're obviously back to talk about March Madness. It's been a wild week, obviously with the Sweet 16, Elite Eight, and we're into the Final Four. Ryder, obviously we're almost to the end of this. What's your general impression of the tournament as a whole, and have you enjoyed it so far?
Uh, as a whole, I've really enjoyed the tournament. I think there's been a lot of different storylines, mostly positive. I mean, a couple negative, VCU being out, but
Mm,
not being able to participate. But for the most part, I think it's been enjoyable. There's been some really good upsets. There's been some close games. There's been some players emerge that I think, risen their draft stock. I think there's been some players that never didn't perform like they could have, which lowered, which happens every year. There's been, different storylines of teams going further than we thought. So I all in all, I've really enjoyed the tournament. I think there's been some crazy things happen too, like where the official, felt that unfortunate incident there the other
yeah.
day, which you never see. That was pretty wild. But for the most part, I've really, really enjoyed the tournament, and I'm really looking forward to the Final Four. I think there's some very intriguing matchups.
Yeah, no, I think the tournament's been great too. And I think, one of the big headlines we'll get into going into the tournament was, the Big Ten and, the great Big Ten teams. And it was tough to get a gauge this year because you're basically just playing conference games. We saw Gonzaga at the beginning of the year did play Baylor, they did play Kansas. But, the Big Ten, they played each other. They're all good teams. But as we get to the Final Four here, even Michigan, the juggernaut Michigan Wolverines are not in the Final Four. So it really makes you look and think, wow, like any given Sunday a team can win, but also were these teams really that good? That was kind of my thought after watching Michigan lose to UCLA.
Yeah, especially there were some bad showings by Big Ten teams, but I think the other way you could look at it is the fact that there's talent all across the country
Right.
in many different conferences, not just the Big Ten, not just the ACC. There's really strong competition all over the country. I mean, look at the Pac-12, right? Kind of a non-powerhouse conference really making a statement this year
Mm-hmm.
at the tournament. So we'll see next year how they are viewed by the outside sources and ranking and all that. But I think it just shows how strong college basketball is around, and that how sometimes other conferences can be boosted up by media and by marketing
Right.
to say how strong they are when maybe they aren't as strong as you think.
Right. And to your point, I mean, you look at the Final Four. We got Houston, we got Baylor, we got Gonzaga, and UCLA. All those four teams are West Coast teams. It's crazy because we think of the media. I just think of hockey and bringing it back to that. People don't vote for awards in Western Conference teams. You don't see them win a lot because guess what? All the writers are from the East, and they're going to bed at 10:30 because that's when the least game's over. Uh, I just I think it's crazy that there's four teams from out west. I think a lot of people hate this Final Four. I've been hearing that like this week about how this is a terrible Final Four. I think it's a terrible call. Three of these four teams, Ryder, have never won a national championship. That's great to me. That's a great headline because unless UCLA does the improbable, it's going to create a great story and I think put a bookend to a weird year, but I think it puts a great exclamation point on a great college basketball season.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And you look at it, and I think the two best teams are in the Final Four. I
Yeah.
like to say Michigan was good, and I really enjoyed Michigan. And I know I picked Ohio to win, but that was more of kind of a, let's see if they can upset Gonzaga.
Right.
But Gonzaga and Baylor have been the best two teams all year. They've been the most consistent teams. They have been the best two teams. I don't care. Maybe Michigan in there as a three, but definitely Gonzaga one and Baylor two or three.
Yeah.
So to see both of them in the Final Four just kind of speaks to how strong that the West is, and Houston maybe, kind of snuck in there to a Final Four. They haven't played a team higher than a 10 seed. That's kind of weird. That's the first time that ever a team's made the Final Four and never played a team higher than a 10 seed. I don't think you'll ever see it again. But I mean, they made it. And look at UCLA, who, they've kind of been, I wouldn't say a joke, but their program hasn't been as strong in football, basketball, kind of the school in general has really taken a step back in the last, I'd say 10 to 15 years.
Lori Loughlin screwed them.
Seriously. And to see them go in basketball, this push and making it to the Final Four and all these teams from out West, it's, to me, I don't think it's a terrible Final Four at all. I think it's a very intriguing Final Four.
Yeah. I mean, forever, there's this term, and I've been kind of trying to define it, a mid-major. And that's what Gonzaga was referred to as, a mid-major. And I said, thinking to myself, Gonzaga is not a mid-major. Gonzaga has been an elite basketball program for a long time. Yes, I think if they win the tournament, that ends that argument. I think that's dead, that they're not an elite program. But even so, I mean, the teams that the Final Fours that they go through, the amount of undefeated seasons they have through their conference. You mentioned Baylor. I mean, 10 years ago, Baylor was a joke. And for the past 5-6 years, Baylor has consistently gotten to Elite Eight, Sweet 16s, where you have Michigan, you have Big Ten teams that, quite frankly, don't do it, or even Duke for that matter, in the North Carolinas of the world. I just think people hate letting in the outcast, so to speak, to the party. And we're seeing that more and more. And I think the media and people at large are just gonna have to accept it and, just face it, that these teams are here to stay.
Yeah, I think you could, throwing it as a hockey guy, you could throw it in the fact that expansion teams, everyone wants to say, they're no Toronto, they're no Montreal, because they're not around as, they're not as household names. Like, take them, Minnesota Wild isn't a household name, or
right.
But sometimes you have to just recognize that teams are good, and that maybe it's not just the early teams or the teams that everyone knows about, or the teams with the high-end coaches, or the teams with the pedigree and the established teams over the past 50, 60 years.
Yeah, original six.
You're right. There's a changing of the guard, and it's something that some people struggle to accept, but I think it's a good thing that it's not the same teams in the Final Four every year. I think there should be new teams in the Final Four. At least to me, I think it would be great if every year in the Final Four, there was one team that never made a Final Four before. That would be an awesome storyline to me to see. But this, to me, is awesome to see. I think it makes the other programs who are more established, like the Dukes and the North Carolinas and the Kansas and the Kentuckys, I think it forces them to kind of step up and say, maybe we're not as good as we think. Maybe we don't recruit as good as we think we do. And it's time for us to start being better.
Right. And we got two college sports I know we both follow, we both love: college basketball, college football. They're polar opposites, because college football, the four that are going to be there every year. You can throw in Oklahoma and Ohio State. They may be interchangeable. Other than that, you're going to get Clemson, you're getting Alabama, and you're getting, throw in another team. But, it's the same Notre Dame, right?
Notre Dame, baby. Notre Dame.
Yeah, they're there sometimes. They might not be anymore with their showings, but we'll save that for another day. But you see this every year: Loyola Chicago, even a Wisconsin getting to a Final Four. We mentioned Gonzaga, UCLA this year. Yeah, UCLA was a great program 20 years ago or 30 years ago when Bill Walton was playing there. But it's been a while. I just think it's refreshing, and it's not something where you can predict it before the season starts, and you can do that in college football. And I love college football, but it's just funner when you don't see all the dominoes before you even tip the ball off or kick the football in these two different scenarios.
For sure. And this tournament really does set it up that there can be teams come out of nowhere, but teams that people don't expect to become household names, because it is a one and done tournament. And in a 7-game series or a 5-game series or even a 3-game series, normally the better team finds a way to win that series, especially in a 5-game or a 7-game. But in a 1-game elimination, anything can happen. And one thing about basketball, it's such a momentum sport that if a team gets hot, they start shooting the ball, they start making plays work. Um, UCLA came into the tournament struggling. They barely snuck into the tournament. They lost, I think, 4 or 5 straight going into the tournament. But if you get hot at the right time and your players show up to play and you find teams have an off night, you can go to a run and go to a Final Four.
Yeah, let's talk about the UCLA Michigan game. That last 5.5 minutes, Michigan does not get a point. It was something to behold because they kept shooting threes and they needed a 2-point bucket, which made no sense to me. And they have a 7'1" guy in the court. What did you make of their whole last 5 minutes? And was that more on the players or coaching? Because I was just shaking my head.
It was very tough to watch as it became very individual. It became a lot less of let's move the ball. Take a Gonzaga who they don't really care. They do not care who scores. They move the ball to find the open shot, and they get very easy layups because guys are open. They move the ball. Michigan, it seemed like it was the complete opposite, where every time one of the guys got the ball up the court, they thought, all right, I have to make a three. I have to become the difference maker in this game. And it became very individual, very, very frustrating as someone who had Michigan making the Final Four. But I think it's got to fall on both because it's not like it was the last 2 minutes. It was the last 5 minutes. As a coach, you have to see that. You have to call timeout and you have to change something up. But as the players, that's just very selfish. It's saying, I'm better than the team, which to me, their bread and butter was moving it down low, scoring those baskets, and then popping it out to the three if the open three is there. But they didn't even look for down low. They just completely forgot about their big men down low who have been their bread and butter all year. So it was very strange to see.
Yeah, I mean, Wagner shot 2 threes. One was an air ball that was just here, and the other one was like a brick. And then Dickinson's down in the paint, sitting there probably thinking, okay, I'm going to be here for 1 year. Let's try to win a national championship. Throw me the damn ball. They didn't give him the ball once. And he's the tallest guy in the court. They're going to foul him because Riley, the big man for UCLA, had 4 fouls. He's going to foul out. And it's an advantage to get him off the court because he's a pretty damn good player. But I agree. I mean, Juwan Howard, I think he is a good coach. But in that sense, you look at this team, Michigan had 49 points. They lost 51-49. 49 points. I mean, Gonzaga is putting up 90 every game. It was such a frustrating game because for UCLA, you take the win, but you look at your next opponent and you're like, we're not getting the breaks against this team. But for Michigan, it's got to be such a disappointing loss because they should have had the game. I think they blew it more than UCLA won it.
Oh, 100%. I mean, you have to give props to UCLA for sure. They played some good D, but to me, a team like Michigan, I think they're averaging high 70s a game all year and high 70s, low 80s. And for them to go out and put 49 points up in an Elite Eight, it's embarrassing is what it is. And to go away from the Michigan team I watched all year, I probably watched 10 to 12 Michigan games, if not more. That was the worst performance I've seen of them moving the ball. They just had no chemistry at all, and it seemed very individualized. And like you said, Dickinson became a non-factor, which that can't happen. You can't let your big man, who's probably the best player on the court for either team, not be a factor at all. And it's not like UCLA was taking him away. Michigan would not feed him the ball. It just didn't make any sense.
Right. And pivoting to Gonzaga against USC, that might have been the most impressive effort I've seen in a long time. I mean, I've said that before this year about Gonzaga, but that game was over 3 minutes in. I watched it, but it was in the second half. I'm like, why am I watching this? I kind of flipped to that UConn Baylor women's game because I'm like, okay, this is interesting. But literally 3 minutes in, Timme had 12 points. Jalen Suggs had like 5 assists. And I'm like, okay, check please. Like the Mobley brothers could not do anything with Gonzaga.
Yeah. So that night we have 2 TVs in my living room, a big one and a small one. So normally the big one's for what you're focusing on, and the smaller ones kind of just, if there's another something on you kind of want to watch. But not focus on. So at the start of that game, I had the Gonzaga game on the big TV and I had the UConn Baylor women's game on the smaller TV. And by the end of the game, I had it switched, or I had the Gonzaga on the small TV and I had the UConn and Baylor up top. And it's not because I was disappointed in the Gonzaga game. It's because that team's the best college team I've ever seen. I can honestly say that they are the best college basketball team that I've seen. I mean, I've only watched college basketball for 10 years, so I can't compare them to a team in the 90s or the 80s because I didn't watch then. I wasn't born. But to me, they're the best team I've ever seen. And the fact that they are the most unselfish team for three of the top 10 players in the whole tournament, maybe three of the top 5 players in the whole tournament. I've never seen a team be less selfish in my life. They move the ball. They do not care who scores. Suggs could be the best player in this tournament. Timme could be the best player in this tournament. And Kispert could be the best player in this tournament. But none of them care who scores. They move the ball. And that is, as a coach and as someone who just loves watching sports, it's amazing to see the chemistry between them.
No, it's so true. I mean, they could easily have such big personalities and say big egos and say, no, I'm doing this. This is my tournament. And Timme gets his 23. Okay, cool. Everybody's happy. We're winning. We're kicking ass. And then you got Suggs, who's got like 10 assists. He's smiling because somehow he gets guys wide open threes every time. I don't know what they just converge on him. Kispert, Nembhard are wide open from downtown. But another thing for me, for Gonzaga, is how good they are in the paint. We see the game in the pros, and it's threes. And this team can beat you shooting threes if they have to, but that's not the way they like to win. Timme is not going out to the three-point line often. He's getting to the paint. He's banking it off window. He's old school in that sense, and nobody's been able to figure them out yet. Suggs gets to the paint. I love watching them play. I think it's so dynamic.
Yeah, they're a fun team to watch. And you take USC. USC was probably the hottest team in the tournament, the way they were scoring and the way they were playing, and they completely shut them down. Like Gonzaga plays defense too. And offensively, they're just every time they're on offense, if they don't score, you're like, wow, I can't believe they didn't score that play. It's crazy to think that, but they're just so consistent and they move the ball so well. And players, they play within the system, and that's coaching too. You have to look at the coach and say, he puts these systems in place for them and they follow those rotations so well.
Yeah, no, Mark Few, great coach. He's been asked forever if he's going to leave Gonzaga. He never did. We see coaches move all the time to bigger programs. He's built this from the ground up, and if they win, I think that'll be a huge accomplishment in his career and what he's been able to do at Gonzaga. You mentioned some of the best players in the tournament, like Suggs, like Timme. Who are some other players in the tournament that are left that have kind of shown themselves to you to be kind of headliners?
The point guard for UCLA, he's been interesting to watch. I like the way
Juzang. Yeah,
Juzang. I like the way he played. He made some big shots there, even though there was a low scoring game. He made some big shots. I like the way he moves the ball. He attacks the paint. I don't know whether he's going to translate to the NBA. It's hard to say. A little undersized, but I like the way he plays. Houston, there's really no one on Houston that has really caught my eye. I don't know about you, but I said from the start, Houston, I didn't trust Houston, but hey, they're in the Final Four, but Houston still hasn't had an impressive win to me. They've just kind of snuck through. To me, it's been Gonzaga, guys. They've just been so dominant. All starting, they don't really have a bench. Like if you notice, they play maybe 6 players, 7 at the most the whole game, but it seems like for the most part, the guys don't leave. They have their tanks are crazy. They play 48 or 40 minutes a game.
Well, yeah,
but there's been some great players.
Yeah, I liked it. Juzang, he comes out when you need him so far this tournament. He's made some big shots, like you said, to go to the overtime game against Alabama. He got hot there, made a couple late buckets against Michigan. But yeah, Davion Mitchell for Baylor's. I think he plays really tough defense, and he's a good player to watch too. Number 45, Mitchell. He looks like Donovan Mitchell a little bit too.
Sure does.
I looked at first and I'm like, wait, is that Donovan Mitchell? But so that they look alike. But yeah, so I think this tournament, I mean, it's only one tournament, but it is a period of games where you're on the biggest stage. I think Suggs will likely go 1 in the draft now. Cade Cunningham is still a great player, but the way Suggs has shown out in this tournament, it's got to make people in the draft kind of think twice about that pick.
Well, like we say, this tournament, it can help you or it can hurt you. I think it really hurt Cunningham. Cunningham will go top 2, top 3.
Yeah.
He could have won out and not scored a single point the whole tournament and still go top 2, top 3. But Suggs, they had him projected at the start of the year at number 2, 1 or 2. Then before the tournament, they had dropped him down to like 5 or 6, 7.
Yeah.
And I think he's worked his way right back up in the conversation of a number 1 pick.
Yeah, just the way he scores, I think he obviously has to work on his 3-point shot, but it's okay. But it's just his vision, his court vision, the way he finds people. It's hard to find in the NBA. And if you can get a point guard that, he reminds me a little bit of Chris Paul, more creative and more athletic, but the way he sees the court and the way he passes is really impressive at such a young age.
Yeah, for sure. He's going to have to work on his 3-point shooting. It's not the best. His shooting is probably the one part of his game that he needs to improve on. But the other thing is he doesn't shoot the ball a lot in the game because he doesn't have to. No. He finds the open guy. He makes good plays. He drives the lane. He doesn't need to shoot threes because he finds a way to find the shooters open for threes.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. Yeah, he's a lot of fun to watch. So the Final Four matchups: UCLA, Gonzaga, Baylor, Houston. UCLA, if they're going to beat Gonzaga, which nobody has beaten Gonzaga in 29 straight games, leading back to last year, what does UCLA have to do to somehow pull off another improbable upset?
Well, they have to take exactly what they did with Michigan. They have to hope that the team they play doesn't show up. They have to hope Gonzaga has their worst game of the year, and they have to hope they have their best game of the year. I mean, it is doable. It's a one and done game. I think what they have to try and do is they have to try and get Timme, they have to try and get Kispert, and they have to try and get Suggs into foul trouble. I think, to me, that's the only way, is to try and get their big three. I think you attack the big three, try and get them to foul. I think you take the ball to the hoop every single time and try and draw fouls. Because to me, the only way you beat Gonzaga is you get their big three out of the game.
Yeah, I would definitely attack Timme early. Make him defend you. I think he's an okay defender. We saw him come up with some steals, but force him to defend you. Because then if you get a foul, again, Suggs too, but Timme for sure, because it seems beginning of every game he gets hot and he scores the first 10 points. And if you get down that much, it's tough to come back because they start their system and then you kind of get choked. Another thing, they got to do, not turn the ball over. Fast break, Gonzaga's going to score on them. You can't turn the ball over because you're not going to win 51-49 against Gonzaga. You're not getting that lucky again. And something that's just been one thing for me this tournament, it's made me crazy. Free throws.
Oh,
how terrible are these? I get it, they're college players, but it's a free throw. It's supposed to be pretty easy. It's unbelievable how bad the shooting's been at the free throw line this tournament.
And the shooting at the free throw line determines so many games in college basketball, especially because it's only a 40-minute game. It's not a 48, and there's only 5 fouls. And especially on the 1-and-1s, you have to make the amount of times I've seen guys go up there and just casually shoot a 1-and-1. Like, you're not, if you don't make it, you are not getting that second shot. And it's like you said, I think it's been the worst I've ever seen at the line for some teams. And it's really cost them.
Alabama.
It
cost them the tournament. 100%.
It cost them the tournament for sure. I think, what were they, like 4 for 15 at one point?
Yeah.
It was crazy.
I think they finished like 17 for 35 against UCLA.
Yeah. You have to make the shot to the line. Those are gimme points. You have to go 90% at minimum for UCLA. They have to get to the line a lot. And I think they have to shoot 23 or 25 from the line to have any chance.
Yeah. Going to that 1-and-1 rule that you were just talking about, obviously people don't know, in college basketball, after you get the 5 fouls late in the game, you get a foul call. A 1-and-1 is you go to the line. If you make it, you get your second shot. You miss it, you're done. It's over. It's basically the other team's ball unless you get an offensive rebound. Would you like to see that rule in the NBA?
I'd love to see it.
Me too.
I would love to see that rule. It's my favorite rule about college basketball that the NBA doesn't have. And especially in the NBA where they call everything a foul. To me, I think that rule is a must. I think it makes it way more entertaining down the stretch of putting pressure on players to make a shot. The whole thing about the NBA, the whole thing about basketball is you have to make shots to win, right? So force players to make shots. Don't just say, all right, easy foul, 2 shots. I think I love the 1-and-1. I think it makes it way more entertaining and it gives teams the opportunity to come back in a game.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, sometimes you're going to foul because you think the guy's going to miss. It's ultimately like a hack-a-shack where you might take a risk or you do foul. The guy misses, you get an offensive rebound, you're down 3, game's tied. I'd love to see LeBron James at the free throw line with about 35 seconds left because that guy's not a good free throw shooter. And to have a 1-and-1 with the ball in his hand, that would be great theater in NBA Finals. I think he'd be sweating bullets up there because he's not great at free throws on his best day.
I just love the rule. I'm such a big fan of the 1-and-1 because it does make the end of the game. I find sometimes in the NBA, the end of the game can become kind of like just hurry this thing up and let's get it over with.
Right.
Where in college, it's not that case. It's like, no one's out of it. They have to make shots.
Yeah. One thing I do hate is when a team's down 12 with about 24 seconds left and they foul. Some of the games drag on. I'm like, okay, let's go. Like, let's get this going. But no, I'd love to see that rule. It's one of my favorites too. But yeah, UCLA got to make their free throws. And I also said, I kind of wrote my notes, don't force the 3. They're better in the paint too. Do what got you here. Don't try to match Gonzaga. Because if you just try to be Gonzaga, it's over before, it even started here because you're behind the 8 ball playing a better team to begin with. Don't try to be them. Play your game and hopefully things work out in your favor.
For sure. To me, I think move the ball around, try and kill the clock, try and use close to as much 30 of the seconds as possible, and then take it to the hoop with about 3 or 4 seconds left. Kill 30 seconds because if you go into a run and gun match with Gonzaga, the game's over in 5 minutes. You're not going to stick with them. So I think you have to be patient, but then you also have to take it to the hoop. But it's going to be a good game. I think both Final Four games have some intriguing matchups, and I'm excited for them. I'm going to be putting my feet up, and I'm going to be tuning in. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I like and I think the NCAA screwed up a lot in this tournament, the weight room stuff and COVID whatever. But they had the women's game and the men's game on at the same time. That was so stupid. I'm not saying more people are going to watch the men than the women. It's kind of just assumed. It's just the way it is. But the women's tournament's been great too. They finally figured it out. They got the women's Final Four on tonight, and then they got the men's tomorrow and then Sunday, Monday. But how did they have UConn on at the same time as Gonzaga? That made 0 sense to me.
Yeah, they dropped the ball on that because probably the best game I've watched out of all of it would have been the Baylor and UConn game in women's. That game was awesome. Came right down to the wire, back and forth. Women making shots. It was some really good basketball there. It's fun to watch, but how do you have it on at the same time? For the people who don't have two TVs in their living room like I do, it really made them. I think they dropped the ball on that one because there's a lot of great talent in the women's NCAA. I think the NCAA women's game is very exciting to watch. I watch every year. I watch the Final Four for sure, and I try and catch as many games as possible when it's on. And there's some really great players in that. And I think the NCAA really dropped the ball in having probably UConn your best team and having Gonzaga your best team on at the same time. It was stupid.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like the NCAA to do stupid things. I mean, it's not like they do
That's
that
for sure.
Time, but yeah. And before we move on from UCLA, I mean, even if they lose to Gonzaga, which I think we both think that they will, what a run. I mean, you go from you have the play-in game, goes to overtime, you beat Michigan State, you go through the tournament, you get to this point, to the Final Four. if they did somehow, I think they'd have to beat Gonzaga. Obviously, they have to beat Gonzaga, and I think they play Baylor in the final. They'd have to beat 3 number ones to win this tournament, which again I don't think will happen, but who knows? It's March Madness. They'd have to go down as one of the greatest tournament winners ever. From the first 4 to winning the tournament, beating 3 number ones, that would be a crazy turn of events.
Especially beating an undefeated team in the Final Four.
Point.
To me, if UCLA can find a way to win, that would be the best story in college basketball and probably forever in the March Madness tournament. It would be one of them for sure. But if I remember before we came on the first podcast, I said, put some money down on a team and watch, see how they do. If someone put some money down on UCLA at, I think it was 1,000 to 1 at the start of the tournament, then I'm sure they're sweating a little more watching the Final Four. But it's awesome to see a team like UCLA, who were a powerhouse back 25, 30 years ago, to see them kind of get back into the mix and play the way they have. Just playing in a playing game just to get into the tournament and to go to the Final Four is incredible. They're playing with house money right now. They should have no nerves going out there. Just go out and have fun. As basic it is to say, just go out and have fun. You shouldn't be there. I mean, enjoy it and go out there and give it your best and play Gonzaga as tough as you can and let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah, I think they're a 14-point underdog last time I checked. That's a crazy line. But yeah, I agree. Just go out there and play and see what happens. But we mentioned the Pac-12 off the top. I think this immediately helps the recruiting. You see 3 teams get to the Elite Eight, and some other programs. Oregon went on a good run. So I think this puts them back on the map. And I think for recruits, they're going to say, well, okay, there's some big name teams, but we're going to we can get in the tournament. There's some good coaching out here. Let's go give Oregon State a chance, or let's go back to UCLA. Let's rebuild this program. I think that would be, Mick Cronin could really use that as a selling tool, saying we're going to build this program back to what it once was.
Well, now it forces some people to have to stay up later at night in the winter. It forces some media. It forces some, the decision makers to stay up late and not go to sleep at 10 o'clock. I mean, I'm probably going to be staying up a little later next year for some games, knowing how strong the Pac-12 is. And absolutely for recruiting, it's huge for UCLA. As soon as you make even a Sweet 16, it makes your recruiting so much easier for the next few years. So to be in the Final Four, you're going to see, I guarantee in the next 5 years, you see UCLA back in another Final Four.
Yeah. I mean, just thinking of what you just said, I mean, Brad Stevens got the 2 Final Fours and he got the Boston Celtics head coaching job. I mean, the players were what they were, but what he did for that program, and it's, they had a bad off year, but so did Duke, and they've had a strong program for a long time just based on those 2 visits, and the recruiting has improved exponentially throughout that process.
100%. It only takes one tournament to really put your school on the map. Oh, I bet Oregon State has a stronger team in the next couple of years. Wouldn't surprise me at all. I bet a team like Abilene Christian might find to be able to pick up a stronger player.
Right.
Take a Iona with, they played well. There's all these teams that had upsets. You bring them in, you bring in just getting a win or getting 2 wins goes so far in the program. Especially there's a lot of under the table money in the NCAA that we know about. And as a smaller school, when you get a win, you get so much money that people don't talk about. Yeah. And it makes it a lot easier to recruit. I think that's part of it that people don't realize, the amount of money. They were saying, I heard Oregon State with their win to get to the Sweet 16 made the school like $200 million or something like that. Like, it's just crazy.
Yeah, imagine what Oral Roberts got being a 15, getting to the point.
Mind blowing. It would scare you, the money that they would have received, but you know what? Good for that program.
Yeah,
I'd rather see them receive it than an Ohio State.
100%. I hope Ohio State lost money and losing to them. Before we get to Houston Baylor, I don't know if you saw yesterday, Chris Beard, the head coach for Texas Tech, he's leaving to go to Texas.
I know.
More about an ultimate betrayal to leave Texas to go to if I'm the next coach of Texas Tech, I know what my motivation is in saying, come here, we're going to go kick his ass, because I couldn't believe when I saw it. That great job at Texas, but Texas Tech's been the better program for a while.
Yeah. That's like going from coaching the Habs to the Leafs.
Mm-hmm.
It's like going from transferring from Michigan to Ohio State in football.
Right.
Like, it's just things you just don't do. Like, it is very, I mean, money talks. I'm sure he got a little pay raise.
Yeah.
That helped. But yeah, it's kind of weird. It seems like a more of a lateral move than it is a promotion.
100%. I mean, the Red Raiders got to the championship game in 2018, and to 2019, and then this year they got to the Sweet 16 again. So it's not like they're going down. Texas they lost in the first round, and they've been a down program for a while. They're like UCLA trying to kind of rebuild it in football and in basketball, in my opinion. They've been kind of flatlined for a while now, and I hope he knows what he's doing, because they don't like to wait around in Texas. They'll fire your ass pretty quick if you don't find success.
For sure. I mean, to me, this is a very simple solution that he's making a lot more money where he's going. To me, this screams that the pay raise is the juice is worth the squeeze for him money wise.
Yeah, and good for him if he's making more money, but be careful, because it can go away.
Sure, the grass isn't always greener.
Yeah. So that brings us to Houston Baylor. The other semifinal, the other Final Four. Do you give the Cougars a shot against Baylor?
No, I don't. Should I? Yes. It's like I said, it's a one game. Either team can win, but to me, Baylor's been the better team all year. If Houston goes on to win this tournament, I'm just gonna shake my head and just tip your cap to them. But I don't know. To me, they're just a team that is lucked out. They've really lucked out in their matchups of who they've matched up on. The teams that they've played have upset other teams and then just don't play their best game against Houston. I don't think Houston's done anything impressive to me. I just find them a very boring team to watch too. I just can't get behind them. But hey, you never know what can happen. But to me, I think you're looking at an 8 to 10 point Baylor win.
Yeah. Baylor, it would be fitting if it was Baylor Gonzaga, because I think they, like you said early in the podcast, they're the two best teams all year. And they played actually at the beginning of the year. Gonzaga did win, but Baylor gave them their best run for their money. I'd like to see that, the rematch, and see what they could do. And what I love about Baylor is they got some upperclassmen, they got some juniors, they got some seniors, which you don't see anymore, and they can win any way you want. They can shoot the three, they can get hot. There was the game where they were struggling. They scored against Villanova. They scored their last 34 points in the paint, and Villanova cannot do anything to stop it. I just think they have a lot of different they have a lot of different things they can do with the ball. Again, Davion Mitchell, they play good defense too. So Houston's gonna have to play really, really, really well to beat Baylor, but I like their team a lot.
Yeah, Houston's gonna have to kind of make us eat crow, I guess. They're gonna have to make a lot. I think a lot of people are on the same side as us where it comes to Houston, where they haven't been very good and they played some weaker opponents and they haven't had their best game. But for Houston, I think they have to have their best game of the season in the Final Four for them to beat Baylor. But selfishly, I want to see Baylor win just because I think they are the second best team in the country, and I want to see the best two in the finals. That's what you want to see. You don't want to see. Yes, you'd like to see an underdog, but if I'm going to see an underdog, I'd rather UCLA than Houston.
Yeah, agreed. I think UCLA would make it for a funner game too. But so that being said, Gonzaga, Baylor.
So that's what I think. I mean, I don't know if I could. I don't know if Gonzaga covers 14 points. On a betting side, I don't know if I can bet on them, but I think they're going to win. And same, I think Baylor pulls it out. I wouldn't even say pulls it out. I think that Baylor wins by 8 or 10 too. I just think both these teams the best two teams in the tournament. And let's not try and, make up storylines if they're not there. I think these two teams are the best two teams. And I think they both deserve to be in the finals.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, 14 points is a lot, but UCLA hasn't been scoring the ball great either. So that kind of says to me, maybe it will be, 25 or something. I think the Gonzaga game could get out of hand because I just think they're that good. But Houston, yeah, like you said, maybe they play great defense and they have all tournament and they muck it up and they make it boring. I just think Baylor has too many guys they got too many ways to beat you. And I don't think Houston has enough firepower to match them when it comes to offense for offense and even their defensive scheme. But if it is Gonzaga, Baylor, because this will be our last podcast before the national championship game, who do you got winning?
You have to go with Gonzaga. They've been the best team to watch all tournament. By best team to watch, they are the best team. They move the ball, they play defense, they're not selfish, they can score in any way. But like you said, Baylor gave them their toughest go so far this year. And I think that would be the case in the final. I think it'd be a very close final, but I think you got to give the edge to Gonzaga. But either way, it's been one hell of a tournament. It's been fun to watch. I've really enjoyed it. But even though I had Iowa upsetting Gonzaga, that, like I said, it was kind of more of an inside joke and going for an upset. But to me, Gonzaga pulls out the tournament, and I think it'd be one hell of a story to go undefeated all year and to be, maybe shut some people up about them and give people actually kind of give them props of being a strong powerhouse team.
Yes, I also would lean Gonzaga. I think it'd be a close game, like you said. Baylor's the only team that got them within 10 points this year, which is another crazy statistic that they've only had one game inside of 10 points. Crazy. But I just look at this team and I don't know how you beat them. I just think they're too well. They got to all have really bad shooting nights or just really, like you said, foul trouble. But I think that'll be a 5 to 6 point game, tight one for sure, because Baylor is no slouch. But either way, it's a great story because you got Gonzaga, who could go undefeated, which has not happened since the 70s. Or you get Baylor, who was right there. Some people said they should have been ranked number 1 above Gonzaga this year because, Gonzaga plays in a weak conference. Thanks, media. But you got Baylor, who's only lost 3 games all year too. And it would be their first national championship too. So either way, you get a good story and you get a new program kind of on top of the mountain.
Yeah, for sure. It's exciting to see. I think we will see a new national champion. I think it's pretty safe to say. And if we don't, then it's another hell of a story run. Yeah. So either way, we're going to have a good storyline to finish off the tournament.
Yeah, no, great tournament coming to an end. And no, I've enjoyed covering it with you. A great idea from you. So I really appreciated you reaching out to me and doing it because I've enjoyed it and love getting to talk about it. Before we wrap today, the Masters is in less than a week. I thought maybe I'd get a winner pick from you.
Absolutely. There's another, as we finish off one event, we move on to another. It's exciting. I mean, look at us sports guys, just love talking sports and watching, but the Masters is the best tournament in golf all year. It's kind of weird that the Masters, I kind of forgot the Masters was coming just because we just kind of had it a few months ago where I was like, oh my God, it's Masters season already. It's going to be nice to see the course actually in good shape because the course really wasn't a joke last time. They did the best they could, but it wasn't the Masters tournament we normally see. But to me, Brooks Koepka just getting engaged. Let's go, Koepka. I think he's fired up with the big engagement there yesterday. So I'm going to get behind either Koepka or, you know what, Rory McIlroy for the Grand Slam. He hasn't been playing great.
No.
I think you look at him, and then Bryson's another guy. He's a polarizing character. But I think I'm going to throw my money on Brooks Koepka.
I like Koepka because in every major, I give him a really good chance to win because he's just a gamer. Is he going to play, though? He just had knee surgery.
I know. That's the thing. He's on defensive if he's even going to play. So that kind of scares me, too. Another guy, Spieth's been playing some good golf. Colin Maurico is a great young player.
Yep.
There's a lot of, especially without Tiger there, which is unfortunate news. And it's good to see that he's recovering and, getting to be with his family. But without Tiger there, I think it really opens the door to talk about some other people. It's not talking about Tiger, and unfortunately we're not. And I know you're not the biggest Tiger guy, but I'm glad he's healthy, or like getting healthier. Sorry. But I think with this tournament, there's a lot of names that you could look at to win.
Yeah. I always get trepidation because it's normally a guy who's won the tournament before or you play there at least 5 to 6 times before you win it. But I look at a guy like Victor Hovland and I'm like, he could win it. Like he's money. Like he's good. Even, Matthew Wolf's a guy who hasn't played great golf lately, but I love watching him. That weird ass swing that he's got, but he's got some swagger. He's going to win a major before too long here, I think anyway. But I like your Koepka pick. McIlroy, it's been a narrative for like 10 years that he's never won the Masters and he's got to get the career Grand Slam, right? And it seems to he never gets close.
No, I think he's never even in the mix.
No,
really, it seems.
No.
But, and you know what? There's always going to be one older guy who's won the tournament before, who's a big storyline, goes out and, is in the mix after day 2. That's going to happen. I don't know who it's going to be. Maybe it's Phil. Maybe it's Mike Weir. You never know. There's always someone. But it's a great tournament. What's that?
Sergio.
Yeah, Sergio could be there. Sergio just won or did he win a tournament? He won
He finished top 2.
Top 2. Yeah, he was in the mix there last. So he's right there. Billy Horschel coming off that big win last week at the match play. I think you could look at him. I think there's a lot of guys. Joel Damon just won tournament. He's an interesting guy. I like him. He's got good style. But there's a lot of guys. I'm gonna have to look more at the lines. I haven't really focused more on golf since kind of been focused on the college basketball. But once the basketball wraps up, I'm gonna look at the lines. And normally in the golf, I'll look at 3 or 4 golfers. I'll look to take a couple that are towards the top, and then I'll look for 2 sleepers where you're looking at 100, 150 to 1, where you're trying to make money. But I'd like to see where Hovland comes in if Hovland's in anywhere 35, 45, 50 to 1, I'll throw some money on him for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. He's good. And what worries me about DeChambeau is he played there in November and he was pretty terrible. It's not about driving the course here. So you got to get it on the fairway or you're screwed. And he has a tendency to not do that off, but and you can never count out DJ. I mean, he just won it and he hasn't played great golf lately, but last summer, I don't know if I've ever seen a golfer get hotter than he did. I'm talking Tiger Woods in my whole life. That 6-month span, he tore up the PGA Tour. It was not even close. Like I think he had a stretch where he went 1, 2, 1, 1, 3, 1. Like it was in tournaments. Like it was just unbelievable what he was doing.
Yeah, for sure. But I know I'm excited to watch the tournament. And yeah, I think I'll send you a text probably next week. And once we wrap up the basketball and look at the lines a little more and see who I want to take. But no, it's crazy that we're kind of getting into the swing of golf. It's an exciting time for a sports fan with this time of the year, because you got baseball that started yesterday, big win for the Jays. You have golf kind of ramping up again with the Masters. You have the college basketball finishing. You have the NFL draft coming. You have the NHL playoffs coming up. You have the NBA playoffs. Spring is a sports fan's dream to me.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's normally this weekend's the best weekend in sports because next weekend. So the Masters first, you got NHL playoffs, like the weekend, the first NBA playoffs start. So it's a little different, but like you said, you got the Masters, and then right after the Masters, the NHL trade deadline. And I'll ask you this just to I know we're going on a little longer here, but baseball started yesterday. We got the college basketball going. We got the Masters next week. Do you think they should start right now? I don't know if it's a great time for baseball to start with a lot of big things happening that is going to overshadow the product.
Yeah, that's true. But one thing about baseball, they always say they're trying to grow the game, but I don't know if they really are. I don't really think they are. They have their core people that are going to watch, but I don't know how much longer you could push it back if you weren't to start now.
Right.
I think I'm surprised that they're playing as many games that they are.
Yeah.
This year, I thought they'd play maybe 15 games less, but I don't know. To me, it's that they're set. Baseball's set in their ways compared to any other sport. So, marketing wise, is it a good time to start now? Probably not, but I don't think they care.
Right. Yeah. I mean, even if I was work for the league and I tell teams, okay, yeah, we're not going to change the switch. We're not going to do anything to, help you guys. We're going to keep this going. But how about you just ask your batters to hit it on the left side? Okay. Don't hit a ground ball to right every effing time. Like, just do that. How about, like, I like that they did the guy on second in extras. I thought that was really interesting. I like that part of the game. It's more intriguing. But yeah, baseball, we both like it. I can honestly say I still watch it religiously, but I don't love it as much as I did 5 years ago. Like, if there's other sports on, I'm not going to pick baseball first.
Yeah, it's tough for me. I grew up, hockey in the winter and baseball in the summer, and I was, not a bad player when I was younger, and I loved playing the game. And unfortunately, I had to give it up. I made the decision to give up ball and focus on hockey. And when I got to high school, but I loved watching the game. I'd watch every game. It didn't matter the team. And now I seem I'm more and more kind of just focused on the Jays. And if there's an afternoon game on, I'll throw it on. But I'm not really paying as much as attention as I should. But other than, as a Jays fan, I keep an eye on them, and they had a great win yesterday, but especially against Garrett Cole. That's a big win to start the year. But I find it tougher to watch. I get more into it when you get into summer. I think once you're in summer and you're barbecuing and you're outside a little more, I think it's easier to kind of follow baseball, because baseball is summer sport. But it's hard to get into baseball right now when it's still cold out. Like, it's -5 out today, and baseball's such a long season. They play so many games that you don't really have to get into it the first couple months.
Yeah, I mean, why are they playing baseball in Detroit? Send them on the road. Miguel Cabrera is hitting a home run in the snow yesterday. So many dome teams and so many warm weather, but no, let's play in Detroit. Let's play in this AL Central. But if only I ran things. But no, right. This was a ton of fun. I really appreciate you giving your time. I know you're busy with spring hockey on the horizon. Kind of let everybody know what's happening with champions in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, so we're actually really busy with champions. We started spring hockey yesterday. We have more ice times tonight, and a busy slate this weekend of practices with our teams. And then we have close to 30 teams between Fredericton and Miramichi. So really good year for spring hockey. We also had a really big announcement this week. I don't know if you saw, but we just partnered with the Fredericton Christian Academy, which is a local private school here in Fredericton. And we have a 2-phase approach where next year there's going to be a skills academy, followed by the next year after that in 2020, 2022, 2023, we're going to have some prep school teams. So we are starting a prep school, and the goal is to start with 1 to 2 teams and grow it to hopefully the next 5 years, 4 to 6, maybe 8 teams. So it's exciting time for champions. It's something that Dax and Stacy put a lot of work into, and it's cool. It's taken a couple years to kind of fully a lot of talks behind the scenes, but it's really grown, and it's good to see. We had that announcement this week, and it seems to be very positive by the community. So yeah, a lot going on, a busy time, but not still enough time to catch a college basketball at the end of the night.
Well, perfect. Great news on the champions front. Like I said, thank you again for joining me so much. Good luck with everything going forward. If everybody have a great Easter weekend, whatever you do to celebrate, enjoy the college basketball. So until then, we'll talk soon.